Let me do a quick introduction and then I'll hand it over to Katherine. So we're friends. I'm really glad you're here, Katherine Breeze, because when I have letterpress problems, I chat with you and ask you what you're up to, and that's always nice. But officially, you teach printmaking and 2D design at the University of Indianapolis. You also started Hullabaloo Press, which is so exciting. And just recently, you've also started a new Instagram. Can I mention that before you get into it? I'll let you talk more about it, but it's called Look for the Printers, and I'll put that over into the chat box so you guys can peek out some of the ways that you can find Katherine on the internet. And I really like Katherine because she comes at this from a different perspective than a lot of us. She's a painter, and so I really love how that influences your work. So thank you for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks for everybody for tuning in, including my printer parents. I see 3 of you, so thanks. So basically Erin's parents and Stephanie's mom. I realized that a lot of us see each other, but I have, through this Hamilton hang, which has been so great, been racking my brain being like, how do I know them? Where have I seen them? What's going on? So I thought what I would do is start by sharing who I am to kind of maybe give reference. I think that is live, yeah?
Nope, not yet. Nope, but we can make you. There we go.
Working, can you guys see? I am a Luddite, so this is new. But we've been talking, this slide's dedicated to Stephanie because we're talking about how this has become a party line. And I saw this and I thought of her because I think it speaks to our community, and that's one of the things that I absolutely adore about being a letterpress printer is being friends and hanging out with all of you. But I wanted to kind of tell you who I am, so let me see if, it won't let me control the screen. Technical difficulties.
The full view sometimes doesn't work. It happens a lot during class. So you have to just
no. Hold on. We'll try it again. Okay, so I am a self-professed super nerd. This is my Halloween costume from this year, and I'm sharing it here because most of my students were perplexed, but I was pied tight. So like Stephanie said, I'm Katherine Breeze. You might know me. Oh my gosh, it's not going to do it. How sad. My press name, I'm Paint by Number Press, with Andrea, who you see there, and that's us in Nashville. So we travel as a team, always together, so you might know us as that duo. You might also know me from the nerdy group of matching students at the Ways Goose. That's us. That's Hullabaloo Press, which I started 4 years ago at the University of Indianapolis. We've taken trips to Hamilton, which have been the highlight of our year. And I am a joiner. My students are joiners. We match. That's why I'm on Stephanie for the ham hang shirts. We take it pretty seriously. But one of the things that I want to talk to you later and get your feedback for is a project that I'm working on specifically geared for this group of nerds. You also might know me from Dave Pete, if you guys know Dave Pete, where Andrea and I are commonly referred to as the gals. Since we all live in Indianapolis, we've had the great privilege and pleasure of being under his mentorship. And since his eyesight has been failing him for some time, we've been some of the printers who've got to help him with his work, along with Erin and Tammy. So you might know us from that. But I wanted to also show you where I live. So when we're not in remote worlds, this is my school's print shop, Hullabaloo Press. And this is our little shop. Like Stephanie says, I teach printmaking as well as 2D foundations. And when I was hired a few years ago, they didn't have a print shop or even a letterpress studio. And so everything that is in here has been acquired from generous, kind people like yourself. Some of you have helped me acquire it or find it or restore it, which I couldn't be more grateful for. Yes, this is probably going to be a big love fest because I love this community so much. But I wanted to show you kind of where I live and work. And you can see the red line on the floor. That's because I have not so hostily taken over our foundations room. So where foundations is taught at my institution, since I was put in charge of that room, I just decided to make it half a print shop. And luckily no one talked to me. My boss actually said that when I got to the column with Winston Churchill, that presses could not exceed past that column. But luckily we are gonna hopefully still move into a new space when the world resumes. And then we have what we call the type vault, and it's a locked closet because that classroom's open where we put all of our type. The flat files have our wood type. So that's kind of where I live. I also wanted to mention I've been really welcomed and kindly helped by the letterpress community, and I know a big chunk of you guys are graphic designers. I fell in love with letterpress because it aligned with my values and mission as an artist. I am a painter and a printmaker, and the work that I make is about storytelling and about preservation. And I don't wear this hat often when I'm engaging this community, so I thought I would share it. But why I love letterpress is because it's this kind of perfect vehicle for me to share, and it embodies the values that I have as a studio artist. So that idea of preservation, the idea of object being important, about telling your story. While the process and the end result's really important to me, it's the culture and the process combined embodying that idea of preservation through production. When I came into contact with that statement, a la Hatch, it struck me because my production of my artwork was about preservation and preserving the stories of the people I was engaging. And so when I met Aaron Beckloff and Dave Pete in grad school at Miami University, I was instantly hooked, and it has spiraled out of control from there. But I just wanted to share that I'm incredibly grateful to this community because you've embraced me with open arms, and I felt like I found my people when I met the letterpress community. Stephanie can appreciate because her husband is a painter. They're not painter hangouts. They're not painter conferences in the same way there are printer ones, especially letterpress printer ones. And so I finally felt like I found my creative community, and that's been really phenomenal. So that's enough about me. I want to actually tell you and open up for discussion about a project that Stephanie mentioned, which is this Instagram account inspired by Mr. Rogers. And say what you will about Mr. Rogers. There's a quote that he's often attributed to is looking for helpers in times of crisis. And one of the things that I realized in this time, in this crazy world that we're living in right now, is how it's important to find your community like this, even though we're remote. And as a teacher, it's been part of my practice to always share what contemporary printmakers are doing, whether it be letterpress or other forms of printmaking. And I'm always asking them to look for the printers. In fact, one of the things that I do in my classes, I have what's called 2 for Tuesday, and we look at 2 artists for 10 minutes and compare and contrast. One's typically historic and one is typically contemporary, and it ties into whatever we're in the class. But at the end of that feature, I have a feature that's what I saw on my Instagram, because I see so many amazing things happening on Instagram and artists being real and sharing their work both in process and finished, that it's a fantastic teaching tool. So thinking about how I already use the platform and thinking about the world and how I can't connect to my students in the same way, I put together an Instagram account called Look for the Printers. And it's a place where I'm trying to gather work to show my students and have them engage with it instead of giving them like lengthy lists of people to follow or giving them a link list where they have to click on everything. It's a hub that I am using for my students, but I welcome obviously anyone to engage with. And the reason I like the idea of look for the printers is because not only just like look for the helpers, can you be this can be a place for us to go to and find comfort or to find voice, is that it also is a call, right? That we can be the helpers, we can be the printers that people look to. So it's geared for a student audience and it's looking for the printer community to be the helpers. But I've just started it and I'm really excited that so many people have been willing to share. And if you've been willing to share, I thank you. So that's kind of what I wanted to share today. And I wanted to see what your thoughts were and if you were interested in engaging. And I'm hoping to continue this beyond the COVID crisis. And I'm interested in what your thoughts are about themes. Maybe we could do themed weeks or how this platform could help you and your students. So I just wanted to share this project and start the conversation there and then see where it takes us, like any good Hamilton hang does. So that's where I wanted to start.
That is awesome. Thank you, Katherine.
Katherine, can I ask when the transition began for you from painting into letterpress?
Yeah, so I went to Miami University for painting and printmaking, and I had done more traditional practices. My undergraduate institution didn't have print of any kind, and so I was looking for an institution that had both painting and print, since I was proficient in painting and wanted to know more print. And of course, as many of you know, Miss Erin Becklaff is the queen of connection, and she saw my work and we met each other in the hall and she was like, I saw your work. I think you need to see the letterpress shop. And it's been all uphill wonderful since then. And actually my thesis show broadside was letterpress printed. It's terrible now that I look at it because it was like the first thing I made, of course. And I used like 800 typefaces and I had to learn a lot about design because I'm not a graphic designer and typography is something that's new, but the process offered me so much that painting and traditional printmaking didn't. And so I'm a believer that studio artists can use any medium and it's just about using the right medium for what it is they want to say. So it started in grad school and it's all Erin's fault.
That's good.
I saw your Indy 500 print you did. Is that the same one that they actually used for the race for the billboards?
Yeah, so I'm lucky. So I'm in Indianapolis, so the Indy 500 is a huge deal here. And the Arts Council here is super active and really wonderful. And they partner with Indy 500 and did a call for basically signage to be put over the whole city to welcome the race fans for the Indy 500. And so I was lucky that mine was one that was selected and then used downtown, kind of billboard fashion to welcome people to the city. I'm originally from Nebraska, as some of you heard me say earlier. So it was the first time I felt like a real Hoosier. So and felt part of that community in a different way.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I realize this is not exactly the topic, but can you tell me about the radios behind you?
Yeah, I collect old radios and vinyl, and so that's like my collection.
Very nice.
At least part of it. I've got about 10 or so vintage radios.
Is that why your big C&P press has a vinyl record on the side as a OSHA approved guard?
Yeah, so Scott was kind enough to help us get that press installed in the school, and because it was in in our school, it had to have the flywheel covered. So I thought if it has to be covered, it might as well be interesting. And because I love vinyl, we made it look like a giant 45. So that's why that came to be. So yeah.
Can you show your indie poster?
Mm.
Do you have it?
Sure. Yeah, I can show it. And the only reason I hope you guys are okay, I appreciate your tolerance. I was worried about holding things up to the screen. Some of these things I obviously don't have, so that's why I put them in a slide form.
No, that was great. And actually, while you talk about that, I was going to say I was on a call with Allison Fisher at Globe.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yesterday, and she was talking about how you can use lots of different type styles, just make it work. And so when you said that, I was like, no, it's doable.
That's good.
Yes. The reason I did this, though, I found a cut, that Dodge official pace car. That's the pace car from 1954, and I was lucky enough to find a cut of it, an electrotype of it. And my grandparents were married in 1954, so the images of the woman looking, that's my grandmother, and the other images are of my grandparents, being the spectators.
Oh wow.
So a lot of my work has to do with kind of preserving my own family's history and story, and so I interjected them into the piece. The electrotype, obviously, I cut or printed and then translated it into a monotype transfer process because it was only like this big. It was like 2 or 3 inches, and it had to be much larger. And actually, you can kind of see it was printed in a grid because it had to be 2 by 4 feet. And I didn't have a press at the time that could accommodate any of that. I only had a proof press, a tabletop proof press. And so each piece was printed in, I think they're 8 inches square, and then pieced together by hand.
Oh, I can see that now. Yeah. Wow. Look at that.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
Good registration, you know?
Well, this isn't the off copies. I think I stopped sharing. Is that right? Yeah, I don't want to take up your guys' screens.
Katherine, can you print at home?
So I actually, when this all happened, grabbed a little show card proof press and like 3 cases of type. And what's funny and ironic about this is Andrea and I actually moved our personal shop to school. So what I found was I was constantly bringing things in for my students to use, and I was constantly bringing things in so I could use the bigger presses. So both my personal and my school shops are at school. So I've done I've just this week had a chance to set up something in the basement and start playing again. But it's pretty limited, but it feels good to be inky nonetheless.
What Vandercook is that great big Vandercook you have, and why is it called that name?
So we have a Vandercook Universal 2. Her name is Diana Prince, which is a spoof off Diana Prince, which is Wonder Woman's alias name. And because she's our warrior princess, it seemed appropriate. And yes, we name all of our presses. I have found that when they have names and personalities, my students treat them more kindly. And they actually practice safer processes or practice safety in a better fashion because they've made a connection to the press. And while I know not everyone subscribes to that, that's worked for me.
Not to tie you up, because I seem to be asking all the questions, I'm sorry. But have you found you're teaching 2D? I've been there working on her stuff, and she's wonderful teaching these other students who are not artsy people, the 2D. are they crossing over into letterpress because they see the other students working on the equipment, or is that helping enrollment?
Actually, one of the things that I love about letterpress from an educational standpoint, and I would be super curious to hear other people comment on this, is that because I'm not a designer and I'm not approaching letterpress from that viewpoint, I am a 2D foundations professor, and I see how beautifully the process can talk about color and transparency and layer and composition and all the wonderful formal qualities. And so my 2D students were seeing what was happening on the print side of the room. And so just this year, I've been able to, with the smaller presses, bring them over, and they started having print assignments in 2D, which has typically been a painting, drawing, computer-based course. And so now we've made sure print has made its way into it because they are curious, and it's a perfect way to introduce them to these topics. The thing that I love about it is it's kind of a level playing field because letterpress is equal parts familiar and equal parts unfamiliar, right? Like everyone's probably dealt with the printed word, with typography, but very few people, not in this community obviously, but very few 18-year-olds that come into my classroom have touched type or dealt with that. And so it's been great to see them break out of their shell because so many students come in and they think, oh, I'm so good at this, or I'm so good at that, or I'm not good at this, I'm not good at that. And here they're all equal. They haven't had any experience with this. So they engage it with a new attitude.
Well, and I think continuing that, has anyone used printmaking or letterpress in any of their 2D classes or use it to expand those compositional learning?
I'd love to know about that.
I just taught we have a fiber major, and in collaboration, there was a faculty that was teaching like a paper sculpture class. And so her students who have like no type experience at all because they're fine arts kids came into the shop and learned to set type, and they set chase. They came in and they saw what they had to work with, and then they came up with different patternings that they could make with the type. And I set parameters for like they chose to use 15-line type, and they built these really beautiful rows of patterns that they then could cut out and use as sculptural forms.
Oh, wow.
Unfortunately, everything shut down right as they were getting ready to install all of that work, which is super sad. But even the flat sheets of some of the stuff they did, because they were looking at the letters as shapes rather than as letters, was really, really beautiful and much different than like how the design kids come into the class and they want to be fussy about the kerning to a point that I'm like, you can't be that fussy. It's wood type. I mean, when they're like, can we move it? Like, I'm like, no, we're done. But they were looking at it as shapes, and they made this is Floyd. They made some really beautiful stuff. So maybe next year.
When I find, like with our students, we have a lot of creative writers that come in because the professor I work with is an English professor, and this whole project started because it's a book arts / letterpress program. So she is very comfortable with making books. And a lot of the students she gets are creative writers, and they come in going, I'm not creative enough to do letterpress. But I think what happens is they see, instead of like, oh, you have to draw the images to go with your words, they get to go through a collection of things and learn how to pair what they're working with what we have. And then they start getting creative and, learning how to do layering. And then they do make beautiful artwork at the end. And so they do learn, like, you can be an artist and not necessarily have like the skills to draw a thing, but they can pair their words and letterpress with imagery that we already have and be creative and bounce off of that. Or they'll come in and they'll find a cut that they really love and figure out how can they pair like their words or become creative with their wording and pair the two very nicely. So we see these students who for the first like 5 weeks of the semester only want to pick up paper and books and sew them to they get comfortable with letterpress and actually really end up almost enjoying it for the most part more because of it's a little bit more free for them to actually come in and make things than the books. They're pretty standard. They have the paper there, and they do creative things, but they can really branch out the letterpress and combine. They finally, the light hits them one day that they can make their own covers as well and combine both of them completely. So it's really cool to see that and see how they do get comfortable with it and feel way more creative than they normally do just in a creative writing class.
Yeah, we try to incorporate ways to get other students into our letterpress studio at the School of Visual Concepts here in Seattle. And one of the ways that we do that is we usually have one night when we are meeting at the school where our typography 1 class will come in, and each person will set a line of type, usually something that unifies everybody together. So one of the projects that has been happening for the past couple of quarters is typesetting quotes from movies. And so Damian Johnston, who is one of our other instructors, happened to lead that one night workshop on Halloween this past fall. And so he had everybody set lines of type from horror movies. And so what it shows the typography students, it teaches them not only history, but they get to see how the letter forms relate to one another and fit together. It's typically in metal type, not wood type. So they're using composing sticks, and they can think about line length, things like that. And then in our color theory class that is taught by, oh my goodness, I am blanking on her name. She's on the letterpress printer here in Seattle. But she brings her students into the class and teaches them how inks and colors mix together and transparencies. And so she's found a good way to get that hands-on element. And it's just for maybe like an hour and a half that she spends time with that. But I'm always trying to think of new ways to get more people in, like with our user experience classes and user interface design certificate program. I want to get some of our digital type people into the class to show them that these M units that they're working on for responsive site design, it's not a new concept. And that you can physically hold these pieces, these M spaces, and help them understand that this was a tangible thing, and now it has new life in this virtual world.
Yeah, I had a student one time when we were doing a typography course, and I was having them learn kerning via a small press. And the student goes, "Well, that's what 2 points is." And I was like, I was like, yes, of course we're learning spacing and we're learning why the space is as important as the type. But when she said like she didn't fathom what 2 points was until she could hold it, I was like, yes, that's what I needed you to learn. Yeah, I learned from Chris Stern, my mentor, that a Post-it note is 1/4 of a point. So it's a half of a copper. And then they start to go, oh, okay, I'm starting to understand. And that they build, like if you have the smallest, it's easy to be like, oh yes, and then that on top of that, on top of that.
Right. Yeah, we do. My other workshop that I teach, like I think I taught 8 this semester in collaboration with graphic design type 1. Each class comes in, our studio blocks are 6 hours. So they come in and do what ends up being for each student like a 4-hour workshop where they set type. And it's usually, well, I like democracy themed things. So it's democracy themed, or recently we've been doing mantras. So they come in and set type, and we talk about the really specific way that Globe sets type and thinks about structure. And I usually ask graphic design faculty to do that after they've talked to their classes about grids. So that we talk about it in this like realm of like a physical grid and like the physical limitations of it, which they start to have, some of them, not all of them, have these like, oh my God moments.
I think the oh my God moments are some of the best parts in teaching regardless, but definitely letterpress.
I do the same thing. I'll take my typography class that I teach, and I'll take them into the to the letterpress room and show them exactly where lading came from or kerning came from and how they used to do it, and why that spacing is important and why the leading is important. And hopefully they can see that from the digital side of it, and when they're in InDesign or whatever. But just to get them to understand that they're not physically doing anything, but when they take my class in letterpress in the fall, they can actually know, oh, I understand now. I get it, you know, especially when it's stuff what everybody's been talking about, you know, actually moving type around, you know, whether it's wood or metal, you know.
You know, Casey, I think that's a good point. And I think of listening to Jim Sheridan talk to workshop students about the chase, and that it, in essence, is the screen, because that's the only thing that they're really used to. And we're still working within a compositional rectangle, if you will. And I think sometimes on screen you forget that it is a format that's created for you, as opposed to choosing, you know, the size that your press determines for you.
I think whoever was it Allison talking about the fiber people, that if you do textile design, which I did for 20 years, you're dealing with the parameters that are similar to the chase. You're dealing with a repeat. And you have that, you know, that you have to compose within your repeat. And so that is helpful to make type become elements. For me, going to letterpress after doing textile design, it was similar.
Katherine, didn't you do a project based on Tom's work? Like we did too. Tom Walker, Ramapack Press uses has a project he developed around pattern and ornament. I know he's on here too. And he developed a project that I did with my students, and you did that. Who was that with? Did you do that with your print class or with your foundations kids?
Yeah, so we were lucky enough to have a really big installation of Tom's work for our Hullabaloo. So our name is Hullabaloo Press, but we also have a letterpress Hullabaloo, which is like an open house and exhibition. And we've done it now twice every 4 years. And Tom did this really amazing giant installation. And he and I were having a great conversation about the formal qualities of his work. And Aaron had produced a very similar, actually more elaborate version of this project. But I had my students on the proof press basically pick a limited number of characters and then use repeating forms and create patterns from them. And then those had to inform the shapes that they ultimately cut their projects in. So Tom, and you can jump in here, Tom, but Tom makes these really lovely pennant shaped pieces that work in a modular unit to create a larger form. And so I had the students do the same thing as a way to introduce the process of letterpress, because they worked as a unit together. And I found that if they start the whole process from setting type to producing a print as a group, they're far more confident to do it as an individual. So this was our introduction group project. And they really helped each other. And it was the first time I'd done that. And Tom and Aaron were my inspiration. So I thank them. And Tom, you should explain your work much, much more clearly than I did. It's beautiful. He's like, no, yes, you should.
Yes, he should.
I posted a link in the chat if anyone wants to look at the corner fill pattern pieces, which were inspired by his pennant project, which is awesome too.
Mm-hmm. I wish I had a picture. What's really cool is I had some 3D sculpture students, and so their forms became dimensional, and they made them so that they were different dimensional forms that were hanging off of the wall, which was fun, which I had not anticipated at all, which was one of those really fun moments. Vita, you were going to say something earlier, I think, weren't you? I don't mean to call you out, but I just wanted to see what you were going to say.
Oh my God. I was going to say, thanks, Katherine.
Hi.
I was going to say that apropos teaching, where I teach in Chicago at Northeastern Illinois University, our letterpress class is required for the designers, and we offer it after graphic design 1 class, so that students have to take it at the same time as typography. So it's just kind of an interesting thing that what Casey was talking about and what Allison and everyone was talking about. It reminded me that, you know, the sequence is so interesting and kind of how we handle it. And I have a question for you, Katherine. Like everybody else, I loved your paintings. When were they produced before you started doing letterpress? Are you still able to paint?
Those particular paintings that I showed you were being produced at the same time as letterpress work. What's funny is that I feel far more confident, obviously, in painting and more traditional forms of printmaking because I've been at it much longer. I've only been really a part of the wonderful letterpress world for about 8 years. So I'm still learning a lot and finding my way through things. But they were definitely produced in tandem, and it just depends. A couple of the pieces I've shown have them starting to merge, and that's exciting. Actually, the next series of paintings that I'm working on is of printers with their work painted into the background. Because the people who I paint, it's about preserving their stories and their legacies, and a lot of times they're considered small stories, right? Intimate stories, not big scope stories. And I've been really inspired by the group of women printers that have been in my life. And so some of them already have been photographed, some of them will be photographed, some of you might be asked in the future to be photographed for this project. But I'm finding ways that they are merging more and more. And print is becoming more the topic than sometimes the process. But I think it's, again, because of what it inherently embodies.
Yeah, super interesting. Just I love all the thinking behind your work and how your practice is kind of combining your education, you know, like being an educator and also being a producer of work. And it's super interesting, and it kind of parallels some of my interests. So like I really appreciate you sharing all of those layers to your work.
Thanks. Well, we'll have to talk more.
And I'm going to jump in because it's a quiet and no one else said anything. I told you I wouldn't talk anymore. Some of you have been contacting me to send you type and sell you type or send you type to play with. But you keep giving me your university mailing addresses, and I'm sure it's not getting to anywhere right now that they're sitting. So if you do email me, that you let me know where to mail stuff so that it can go to somewhere where it's not going to sit on a shelf for another 2 months. So thank you.
PSA, Printer
I know.
Service.
Oh, the wonderful Printer Service Network. I'm also loving watching people setting type and printing right now.
I know, there's a lot of printing going on.
Yeah.
Well done, all of you. I wish I could join you. That would be an ultimate future Hamilton Hang, is all of us in the shops when we can return to our shops.
Brad, we might just have you on screen at some point, and then like we'll do our 24-hour ham hang, and it's just gonna be you printing.
This is pre-recorded. I did this yesterday.
Katherine, thanks for including me today. I snuck into my studio yesterday. There was nobody in our shared space. And I went to pick up some prints and said, oh, well, maybe I can print something too really fast. And a couple of people wandered in, but we kept at a great distance because the place is pretty big. But now, unfortunately, or fortunately, I know I can kind of sneak in there if people aren't around. Just don't really know how to do that because there's not like a Nest camera I can check or something. But thanks again for including me today. And I'm really happy that I got to print yesterday.
That's so great. I'm glad you got to print too. I think it's made me really increasingly aware of how grateful I am to print. And I jokingly tell my students that I feel like creatives get a creative form of hangry, that if they don't make, they get hangry. They're the side effects of hangry. So I can appreciate that because we're going on like 3 or 4 weeks here, and I know that's a long time. But I think it also produces new and interesting ways of doing work.
I can attest to is it pangry? I don't know, hangry?
I don't know what
but I can attest to that, and I've had some, non-printer friends say to me at times, like, you seem a little tightly wound. Have you been in your studio lately? And I'm like, I haven't actually. So yeah, I'll make that a point. So yeah, I think it's a very real thing.
We need to figure
really
out.
Lucky to have mine. Like, I don't know what I would do if I couldn't get in the shop. I'm so lucky that this is in the barn behind my house. And I've got 500 sheets of paper coming for more of these Baltimore posters. So I could do a 24-hour print stream coming up.
Nice.
2 colors, double trip. It's going to be a big process. But yeah, I'm really happy that I can still get in. And I feel really bad that I can't just invite everybody over and say, come print in my shop.
At least you're giving us a taste of it by being in your shop.
Yeah. I'll switch it back over now so you can see the rest of me just in this calendar.
Is everyone
convinced? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jason.
Is everyone convinced that Brad's actually printing and that's just not a video and he's sitting in his robe laughing right now?
Not at all.
How you do the video background zoom thing?
In his robe with the cat on his lap.
I feel like I wish there, like Kyle Dury has the type truck. I feel like I wish that we could have like a kit that we shipped out to everybody so that every week someone had like a little show card press with some type and some paper and ink. Just a thought.
I actually do, when I go places and I have a little proof press that's 7x11 is the paper size. And I put it in a Pelican case. And so it can go places and not get beat up, and I can actually pick the whole thing up, kind of. It's a stretch.
Nobody push her.
yeah. But
it
that
could
might have to be the next
CSA.
thing. Yeah, right? We send it around. Add a sticker from wherever it's traveled to.
That'd be awesome.
There was a gentleman at the Ways Goose at Marie's a couple years ago that had a 7x11 bolted to the inside of an old-fashioned suitcase, and then on the other side he had built-in little compartments for his ink and type, and he was printing poetry for people like on demand. I cannot remember that guy's name, but I helped him fix the press, but I don't remember who it was.
Yeah, those 7x11s are great. Silver Buckle has one at Hamilton, and it's really great because one person can pick it up. It can go anywhere, which is it's fun. Except Jim. Yeah, they're great, aren't they?
I don't have it at the house right now. I have a small extra at the house.
Ooh.
I'm a press hoarder.
You're in good company. I did like the one time Jim and I went to a workshop though, and somebody went, I thought you were gonna bring the one with the big wheels on the side. And we were like, nope, not for a one-day workshop.
I like that we have stinkery and inkry as our potential hangry words. I say there's enough of us here that if we coin this and start using it, it could catch on very quickly.
All it takes is an Octothorpe, one hashtag, and we're good.
Catherine, when you talk about how UIndy has connected to the broader community, what does Val have?
She has a pound sign or a hashtag.
Yeah,
or hash.
more with tag. Sorry.
What now?
Oh, I got really distracted. Right. When you talk about the ways the UIndy community, like how Hullabaloo has become this presence within UIndy's community, because I think that's interesting and not what always happens. Like sometimes a letterpress studio or workshop is in a library and the university may not even broadly know they exist, but I think UIndy, like Hullabaloo is known. Like President Rob knows you guys.
Yeah, Pres Rob. That's what we call our Pres. Pres Rob. So a couple of things. One is that when I was hired with the notion that I needed to start print in our department. We did not have it. We're a small liberal arts school. We have about 100 art majors, and they were looking to expand their offerings, but they also, all of us wear many hats. Like I teach 3 different things. Most of us teach different things. So when they said, oh, we want to do print, I was like, well, but it has to include letterpress, obviously. So over the last 4 years, I realized to raise the funds and find the equipment and to get support, I needed to make us visible and valuable. So a lot of our efforts have been making things for our campus and community and doing outreach and providing events. We've partnered with the public library, basically finding any way that letterpress can be relevant and accessible so that people know us and see us. Typically on campus, I'm known as the letterpress lady before any other identification is used, just because I've tried to make it as accessible as possible. So for instance, like we have a number of different events that I bring the tiny press on the cart. I have like 2 wagons that we just roll all over press and set up shop, and people can have experiences. I've also made it a point to make big events happen frequently. So we've done a big event about every other year. We've done the Hullabaloo, which is the biggest event, which is an exhibition, an open house, sometimes a film screening or guest artist speaker. Stephanie spoke for us this last year. And we just tried to be as visible as humanly possible. I will admit, I had to get over well, we don't have this and we don't have that, and we could do better and we could have more and we could be more impressive. Because I realized the only way for us to get those things was to be visible and to try to be valuable to my community. So actually, the beautiful way that we got our Vandercook, Diana, is when we needed a way to make more prints quickly for our campus. And I said, well, if we could fundraise for it, we could get a bigger, larger press, and the university actually hosted it as a university-wide fundraiser. So our alumni purchased the press essentially for us, as well as other community members, and then we of course made things in return. So all I could say is, from my experience, is be as visible and valuable as you can to your community, so that even in hard times like this, they are valued continually. Because I actually have a meeting with Pres Rob later today. And that was the first thing he asked me, was what I was doing with my classes now that we didn't have our printing presses. And that question meant a lot to me, because it meant I was on his mind and he was worried about my students, and that meant the world to me. So.
You're also very lucky. Anytime I've been at UIndy working or doing workshops, your dean of your department is so supportive of you and your program.
Yeah, I am incredibly fortunate. This, while it certainly takes a lot of hustle, is because of a million different people. A bunch of them on this call, a bunch of them in my campus community. It takes a village, and I'm lucky that I have a supportive village.
Crying. That was beautiful. I know Leonard had a question. Did you have something you wanted to ask, Leonard?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, I really like the concept that you were teaching the students the form of the letters with wood type, and even in my graphic design students, I'm trying to emphasize that. And we have a good amount of wood type, and I want them to use the boldest and the strongest, so they can really get a sense of the form, and then start to enter into the history of the making of type, traditionally metal type, that is, that the first thing that's in fact made is the counterpunch, so that which is not part of the letter form, that which is the negative part of the letter form, is the first thing that's in fact created by the punch cutter. And so they can start to see in positive and negative forms, and then all of a sudden things open up really dramatically for them. And I like that the letterpress can do that better than anything in wood type.
Yeah.
Thank you for mentioning that. I never thought about that before, and it seems very important. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, because it's essential to just two-dimensional design, but it's also gives them an idea that it isn't just something that is a line. This creates the A, this creates the B, that it's created by the negatives of everything around them. It places them in a totally different position in relation to any work they do after that.
Absolutely.
I agree. I think there's some things that that my students do in the letterpress class is that form counterform. You know, it's that that negative space or the white space or the black space that takes up, that makes an interesting form. You know, whether they're overprinted or they're just typed close to each other. You know, and kind of the foundation of even logo types or symbols when you're making them, it's the form that goes around them. That's good topic. Thanks, Leonard.
One of the interesting things about making wood type, new wood type, is you make the patterns either by hand, or I do mine with a laser, and other people will do them different ways. But a lot of times people will come and to my workshop. Jen Farrell came and she cut a beautiful font. Katherine and Angie have come and cut a beautiful font. And they said, we want the negative pattern pieces that we cut the 1/4-inch plywood to get the R. They wanted the R outline, and they're using that to do streamers and different creative things. And I saw someone took some of my center cut, my pattern outside scrap cuts, and they made a 2D or 3D lamp with lights and stuff. So you're right, all pantograph cutting, and Jim knows this, and other people that do it. You're cutting away the negative space. You deal with negative space all the time.
True enough.
Yeah, but when you're doing the punch cutting, you're actually creating the negative space in that counter punch. That's the other part that fascinates me. You're not cutting away that which is negative. You're actually creating a form that is the negative, and it's a different construct of approaching the piece in an additive form rather than a reductive form.
Jim, Moran, who came and did your workshop on making punches? Stan?
Pardon?
Stan Nelson?
That's correct. Yeah, Stan, I believe, made punches for quite a while. He had been at the Smithsonian, I think, as well, working with that collection.
Yeah, that was at the old museum. Was it the last Ways Goose that we had at the old space, or the one before the last?
Yeah, 2012. Ancient history.
About that.
Feels like it.
Matthew Carter talked about that too in his presentation at the Ways Goose.
Oh, that's true. He was talking about Enschede and working with Radish.
Yep.
Yeah, right. I've got a request for all of you. I was thinking about all of the wonderful work that's been created in response to what we've been going through. And so I thought it would be really nice if we could get all of those posters and have a show next year based strictly on pieces created during this time. And so Steph and I were talking about it, and she had mentioned the fact that it would be ideal if we could pay for them as well, because of course that is one of the difficulties of the virus, is that so many people out of work, so many people not selling things. So that's where the effort is going now. But I would just like to kind of let everybody know that the plan is to have an exhibit in 2021 that would be focused on works created during this time. So if you are interested in contributing, let me know. You can always email me at the museum. And then what we'll attempt to do is look for funding so that we can purchase those, as opposed to getting them as donation. But obviously, we are not saying no to donation, but we'd like to pay for artists who are creating great work.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. I just put your email over in the chat. So if anyone has a good idea, and it might not be your work, maybe there's work that just has been inspiring you right now, please share it with Jim.
That's really great. Thank you for thinking of that and doing that. I think it's really considerate, and clearly this is a very compassionate community that we have. I'm curious, and forgive me because maybe an email was sent and I missed it, but what's the state of new impressions? You know, there was talk of taking that online.
Yes, so yeah, there was an email, but it was a week or two ago now. Everything's starting to blend together. So if you don't know, New Impressions is our juried exhibition we do at Hamilton. This is our 6th year where we're showing work. It's an international show. It's a juried exhibition from work all around the world. And it was supposed to go up 10 days ago, or I think it was, all the work was due 10 days ago. We've got about half the work. And of course, I told the other half, please don't send your work right now because we don't want anyone putting themselves in danger to send work to Hamilton. So I've got it all collected. We are working on we always do a show, we do a poster for the show and a catalog. Nick Larson, who used to be a volunteer at Hamilton, who now works at Hat Show Print, is he always does this as a volunteer thing every year to help out. So he is currently having a block sent to him so he can carve a block for it. He is working on the digital catalog. And probably within the next week, I'll figure out how we're going to share the work. Because what I need to see is if we can share it with the photos I have from everyone, or if I need to re-photograph the work to make sure it's really easily seen in a online exhibition. Because that's what I was hoping to do and still aiming to do is an online exhibition until we can show it at Hamilton. I just need to see the quality of the files I have, if that will allow for that. So, but everything's still moving along with just backed up timeline. So thank you for asking.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you for all your work on it.
Yeah, we're always happy to share it because we see new work from new artists every year. So.
And just so I don't have to call my daughter and ask her, when is the next one of these Hamilton Hangs?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question because we have those people on the call. So the next Hamilton Hang is Thursday, April 23rd at 1 p.m. Central Time with Mr. Jason Wedekind, as we know him, Genghis Kern. But it's a really fun one because it is a tandem Hamilton Hang. So then on Friday, April 24th at 12 p.m., we have Rick Griffith of Matter. So he is going to, well, I don't want to ruin any surprises, but don't miss either one. Yeah, it's a good Colorado representation. Jason, would you like to say any words before? You're muted, buddy.
I know. I was trying to, the spacebar thing didn't work. No, I'm really excited. It's, as Rick showed you, he's able to work in his shop, and I am as well. So, and I know a lot of you aren't. So it'll be fun. I'm going to show you guys. I'll spoiler alert a little. Like for 15 years, I'm like, I should put a blog together with these cool projects we've done. And so I'm going to do a video. I'm going to show you guys some of the cool shit that I've always wanted to put on a blog. And because I think it's a little different than the stuff that our network does a lot or thinks about a lot. So it'll be kind of neat, random. And then Rick and I, we're actively figuring out the greatness that is going to be the interactive 2-part. But those of you that don't know, we're both in Denver. We are about maybe 7 minutes away from each other. So, but I haven't seen his ugly mug in a couple of weeks. So that's about it. And I'm going to send a request, and I might just use Scott more, but he was a perfect plant for the beginning of the presentation. I'm like, like you're on a talk show and someone asks a question that she knows the answer to.
Yes, exactly.
Plant or maybe Rick will do my plant and then I'll be Rick's plant and no one will know the better.
But I've been to both of your shops when you hosted us in Denver, so I could, you just feed me some sample questions and I'll make them sound like they're original.
No, I'm very excited. It's gonna be fun. So I'd like to see the new faces on here today.
Does anybody need some beautiful 5-line Tuscan? 6-line
Oh
Tuscan?
yeah, we have sorting to do.
Rick, isn't that the 6-line Tuscan you rent from me?
Bullshit.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. And I've got exactly 9 letters, including an FFL ligature, an AE diphthong, and an FI ligature.
Ooh.
With it.
Waffles and raffles, Rick.
Did you say it's 5-line or 6-line? How many lines is it?
6-line. 6-line, mostly lowercase. I got 1 capital letter. A C.
And then remember Tony, I see Tony, you have your Hebrew. Do you want to hold that up or do you not have it out with you?
Come on, Tony. Tony.
You're a comedian. I feel like I'm watching The Late Show.
All of you are comedians.
Sorry, I was doing that pantomime just, I've yet to discover that. I saw it recently, but I'll dig it back out, and if there's going to be a place to post it all, I'll send it, because it's all Hebrew to me.
But
Jason, do you either you or Rick need a paper drill?
I need a new motor for a paper drill. I've got a paper drill, but the motor blew up.
I got a paper drill that's in my way.
I'm good.
I'll take it.
Okay.
And I'll get rid of the other one since it's a non-operating object.
I'm still trying to find my floor mounted corner rounder that I lent to some designer because I didn't want to round his corners of his cards. I'm like, here, dude, just take this.
You know what I did
6 years ago.
Perforator. That tabletop that you call the perforator.
Yeah, I can't. I'm not loaning that out.
Yeah, I need a perforator.
I think, do you guys ever listen to those online, it's on the radio and they have these types of calls where you can get this here, you can get this here. I think we're going to do a ham hang that's just that. Call in if you got something to give and call in if you're looking for something.
Rick, I've got a big floor model perforator that I don't know if I'm attached to yet. So if you're ever in Maryland, let me know.
Is that Allison?
No, it's Val.
Val.
Hey.
Oh, hey, Val. I was like, who is talking? There's too many squares.
Yeah, I picked up a 36-inch Rosback, and I would like to restore it, but I don't know if I'm ever going to have time. So,
do you have pins for it?
I think it's got all the pins. May or may not be kind of rusty. I don't know.
Someone would fight you for those pins, I think.
I know. But I haven't decided if I want to give it up. But if you convince me, we'll talk.
Well, when I come down to clear out my mom's storage unit in Fairfax County, I'll make a trip and you can decide then.
Okay, sounds good. Let me know.
Solid.
We actually have a box of new old stock pins at the shop if someone needs them.
Who said that?
I think that was Mr. Rob from Tribune.
Robin Kim Miller at Tribune.
Okay.
Well, I'll check mine. If I need any, Rob, I'll let you know.
Rob always has the neatest toys. He has a flong casting machine we're working on trying to get that to work. Yeah. I'm excited too. So
it's a tabletop one, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, Stephanie, the front of the shirt can be the party line, but the back needs to be the swap shop.
Yes, so we're planning t-shirts for the ham hangs, which we're gonna call the party line. We'll just get 2 t-shirts, and one of them is gonna be cut off. We're going, I feel like muscle tees. Okay, so we're now at 109, and I know you guys, and the ham swap shop could go on forever. Which I think I'm gonna get a bouncer for. because that way anything that breaks out, I don't have to handle. But I want to say thank you everyone for joining us today. We had about 44 in the call. Catherine, you did a wonderful job. It was so nice to hear more about what you do. So thank you.
Thanks so much, guys, for letting me host the hang.